again, you can take that scenic coastal route that the tourists use. And after you get to Bucksport, well, let me see now. Millinocket. Come to think of it, you can't get there from here.
Marshall Dodge and I recorded that story back in 1958. And in the years that followed, we produced 8 more records on the Bert and I label. I remember 5 years ago, it seems as though it were yesterday, when Marshall told me he had met Tim Sample. And when he mentioned the name Sample, he broke into that marvelous and unique Marshall Dodge laugh and said, "I found the funniest man in Maine." Marshall and Tim performed live on stage, and there were records planned at the time that Marshall died. But now has come the natural evolution from records to video, and that's what we're introducing now. In Marshall's words, Tim Sample, the funniest man in Maine, and he's wicked good.
Yeah, Mother, she drives a truck. Yeah, quite a good job, too. She drives a generic beer truck. You seen that stuff? You know this generic. You go in the store, it's got the white carton or box, or, like it'll just say soup. It don't say what kind. It just soup there. Well, Mother's quite heavy on that, and she drives this generic beer truck, packs it right alongside the trailer. It's got a great big box on it, just says beer. Them little lines, numbers. Matter of fact, it just says truck on the front of it. It's It's from that company, She gets her checks, just says from the company on the top of it. But she's wild over that generic. She goes in the store, that's practically all she will buy. Now, I personally believe it's going to get the point, see, where you go to shop and save or something, see, and all you're going to see on the walls is these racks with these different sized boxes. Be large, extra large, family, medium, small, just white boxes, just say food. You dump it out, eat it, and that's it, Kind of cut out the middleman. Well, of course, Mother knows that I personally, I'm a reader. I enjoy reading a great deal. You can imagine. I don't like anything too heavy, of course. Something light, like a Clorox bottle or something. Usually pretty good for me. But Mother knew this, of course, and she come home from the store the other day, and I tell you, she had just a ticket, boy. She had been down to the Bud's shop safe down to Pittsfield, and she had purchased it was a generic novel. About this big. Yeah. Oh, it was slick as a smelt. It was about like that, white, wasn't too thick, not too intimidating, just says book on the cover. And I picked her up, and I started reading, and it was about this fella, don't specify who, comes from this town, no particular name, I tell you, it's a good story, and it don't bog you down with a lot of details. I bet you I read that 4 or 5 times that week. I did. I liked it awful good. And, of course, a lot of times, well, Mother, you know, she's very industrious. She is, besides that work, she works 7 or 8 times a week. She's working on this selling the generic beer. But she also has a sideline job. She sells this Mary Kay. You see that? Cosmetic. You get a certain amount of it and they give you a pink Buick. Well, they give her one, because it wasn't exactly new. It was a 73. But it had power everything. I mean to say, you get in that thing, it power ashtrays, come right out that sure, and had the power antenna, go up, push a button, it goes right up like that, comes right back down. Of course, it just had a coat hanger on the outside there, but it goes right up now. It was cut off behind the driver's seat with a flatbed on the back of it, you know. I tell you, you can carry a load of cosmetic on one of them. Probably more than you can sell, really. Well, some of the boys don't like their wife going out, because, of course, they go out selling it. They go out ramming around 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, you know. But what I like was, I happened to see when Mother first come home with that kid, she showed me, they give you a little starter kit. Got 2 or 3 different kind of cosmetic in there, and they got lipsticks. Now, I happened to notice one of them lipsticks, one of them colors, was exact same color as this safety orange that the hunters wear, you know. You know, you see them going down 2 or 3 miles over down the side of the hill, that color. Or the road crew flags you're on, and that's a certain color called safety orange. Well, that's one of them lipsticks, the same color. Well, I thought that was pretty good, because I don't know about the rest of them, but I personally feel safer riding in the car with Mother at night when she's wearing that lipstick. See, I figure if we'd have a flat or something, you know, all she'd have to do is just stand out on the soft shoulder, just kind of pucker up at regular intervals, you know, like that, you know. Now, you know, if you live in Maine, if you're a native, you know how this goes every year. You've probably got neighbors just like this that will always say you ought to go south for the winter. You ought to go south. They're always saying you ought to go south. It gets kind of monotonous. Everybody, oh, what a wonderful time we had down south last year. Well, Mother and I had heard about all of this. We could stand, you know. We've got to go south. You ought to go south. So last year we decided we was going to go south. Well, I can tell you right now, you don't want to bother. It wasn't worth the effort. We spent the whole winter in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I wouldn't do it again. But there was one good thing come out of it. We was driving on the way home, we happened to stop in one of these video arcades. You see them? Oh, it's quite something. They're very popular, you know. And they make a lot of money. Some of them fellas work in there make over $2, $3 an hour. And the kids, what they do is they feed them quarters in these machines. You know, they got these asteroids and them kind of game. Of course, Mother and I don't want to play anything about that kind of stuff. We got enough trouble with that kind of thing without playing a game about it. But think about that now. But I said to Mother, I said, you know, there's a lot of money in this. I said, somebody ought to invent or develop a game, one of them video games that's orientated around Maine kids. See, I didn't think these Maine kids was interested in that stuff, really. They might do it if that's all they was, but I didn't think they was really interested. Well, of course, we've been a little worried about our boy Hubert. I don't know how I can really describe Hubert. Hubert, let me see. Well, Hubert is, he's good with his hands. He's numb as a hake, but he's good with his hands. He lives out in the barn, right alongside the trailer. He lives in the barn in a 57 DeSoto. That was the last year they made them cars, and if you look at the one he lives in, you can see why. But I was a little concerned, you know, so we thought maybe this would be a good project for Hubert. Well, we told him about it, and boy, he went right after it. Oh, he was, you know, he used to sit out there on that old Philco and watch As the World Twirled or some of these shows, and well, he went right to town on this, and it wasn't more than 3 or 4 days later, he called Mother and I out to give her a try, you know, give her a whirl. Well, we come out. I was impressed. He had that video game. It stood about just the size they do, about that big. Had one of them little canopies in there. You kind of get yourself intimate with that video game. Had that screen from the old Philco wired right in there. Couple of buttons. There was already too many buttons on that car, and he had a couple of them buttons, one on either side. The outside of that game was all nice barn board. Gorgeous. Of course, if it was damp, it kind of smelled a little bit of hen dressing, but... And across the front of it, there was a little strip of that brushed chrome off of the dashboard of that DeSoto. And there was two little slots there where you put your money in, see. There's two of them, because he had it set up so it would take Canadian money. Now, you see, it will take the Canadian money, it just don't give you a whole game. You understand? Well, we put our quarter in, see, and the first thing that happens, that screen jumps, lights right up, jumps right out at you, and right down from the top of the screen, jiggling just like that, see, comes a little digital pulp truck. Just like real life, right up on two wheels on either side, you know, and... Wicked. Well, you get ready, you see them come down through, and you think you got your timing right, well, you jab one of them buttons, right across the bottom runs a little digital skunk. Now, when you think you got it just right, see, right to where you got your timing down, while you jab, and if you should happen to hit that just spot on, see, you don't get these wild, all these noises, kind of distracted, just a nice smell comes out from underneath it. Before we go too far, I've got to explain just a little bit about the type of humor I'm going to be doing tonight. Now, this is Maine humor, and as such, it ain't the kind that you see on television, see. Don't start laughing yet, it's gonna get funnier. It ain't the kind where the fella, see, he tells a joke and then they laugh, then a joke and then they laugh. It ain't like that, see. A lot of this is gonna go right over your head. Now, it ain't that it ain't funny. You just don't get it. Now, you might find in the course of the performance this evening that you don't find yourself, well, come right in, dear. No, come right on, come on in. No, Looks like there's a couple extra seats up there, but the restrooms are jammed. Now, wait a minute. Before we go too far, I got to explain another thing. When I ask you a question, like, how many's ever been to Eastport or something, I want you to understand, and this is generally true of most any public performer, that when I ask you a question, I am not interested in the truth. What I'm looking for is audience response. See, I don't really care if you've been to Eastport or anywhere else. I just want to feel like you're with me. See? Now, how many here has been to Eastport tonight? Friends, I got a little tip for you. You've never truly experienced the coast of Maine until you've paid a visit to Moody's Diner. You'll see what I mean. I want to recommend to you, if you should have any folks to come visit you from out west, Connecticut or New York, if you should have any visitors in the summertime that want to go to a real, authentic, down east Maine restaurant, I want to recommend the absolute best in the state of Maine. And this restaurant is located between the towns of Waldoboro and Rockland, right on Route 1, gift shop capital of New England. Of course, down in Wiscasset, they got that new nuclear gift shop there. You see that? They take that waste and they kind of reform it into these giant ceramic seagull ashtrays, and they get that out of the state fast in the summer. But of course you realize that I am talking about a classic restaurant, which most of you have at least heard about, and I'm talking about Moody's Diner. Oh, gorgeous. Now, Mother and I go down to Moody's on a Saturday night. You drive in, you come up over the hill if it's foggy, you see that great big arrow pointing down, all them little lights flashing. Moody's. Drag you right in. You pack your car and you just go to take a little, first of all, just get in the place. You've got to go up the steps and go in this little kind of a plywood entryway, just like you got on your trailer, so you feel right to home just going in. They even got a couple of them little ceramic cats grabbing on the outside of it. You know you're home. Now you walk in the door and you kind of got to take a left or a right. There ain't much choice, kind of narrow that way, but you go and you sit in one of them little intimate booths. And I mean they're intimate. You've got to kind of set, if you're sitting right opposite each other, you've got kind of offset a little bit or your knees would bump, they're kind of. But you sit down there and I tell you this, gorgeous, this is the real old-time Maine. They got them little intimate jukeboxes there that's got them songs where you get your own song. You get to hear the song that the truck driver that was there before you wanted to hear, They even got a lot of songs on there that they got nowhere else, How can you miss me when I won't go away? And how come you believe me when I told you that I loved you when you know I've been a liar all my life? That's on there. Mother and I, that's our song. But we sit down there, they got, and they got the bottle of generic ketchup right on the table, and they got them little placemat that looks kind of like a bath mat at a Holiday Inn, and got a picture of a guy catching a bass going like that, and the colors are kind of jagged off to one side, and gorgeous. Got them little creamers that looks like a cow made of plastic. Says, ask your waitress about this, you never do. Neither does anyone else, for that matter. But, well, we go in on a Saturday night, and they have got a special down there for $1.99, all you can eat beans. And you get a good charge of beans. But that ain't all you get. You get the plate and the beans. You get a nice little paper cup full of coleslaw. This is just the start, dear. You get a little plate with 2 of these real puffy rolls that's about probably that big, see? Of course, if you was to squish them to the actual roll content, it'd be about like that, you know, but right alongside of them, setting on the plate, there's a pat, about that big, of probably the hardest butter on the East Coast. You could probably scoop that up and drive it right through the rolls, the plate, the table, and everything right there. And not even put a dent in that butter. But just so she don't harden up on you, they got her on a piece of ice there. Little cake of ice there. And of course, right alongside the beans on your plate, on your actual plate, they have got 2 of them bright red hot dogs. You know, that kind that looks like the flares the truckers have with them, bright. I mean bright red. Now, I don't care to eat them, but I always save them because there's nothing better trolling for salmon. They'll take 6 or 8 good strikes before they break up, you know. They just bounce right back, you know. Well, we sat down this one evening. We was just about to enjoy our meal. Now, you have to understand that Moody's Diner is located very close to the town of Rockland. And Rockland is a town that's been traditionally known for fishermen. And this particular evening, these 3 fellas come walking in the door. And I mean, they was pretty hefty boys. And you could tell right off they was fishermen. You go out and spend 2 or 3 weeks at sea, dear, even if you don't catch much, you get kind of gamey. And there was a little bit of a tailwind when they opened the door, and Mother and I identified them right off. Well, as luck would have it, they happened to situate themselves right at now you have to understand that there's a counter there next to the booth, see? There's a counter, and there's little stools, and the way it's built is such a way if you are sitting down, see, them stools are located just about eye level. Now remember that's pertinent to the story. Well, these 3 fellas walked in, and I mean they was big. I would say, conservatively, the smallest one probably dressed out about 250, 275. They plunked right down on them stools, and they started bailing them beanstalks. I mean bailing. I'd say they had 4 plate loads to our 1. Now, at this point, I'd just like to point out that there is a certain inevitable physiological consequence involved in the consumption of a particular, large amount of this particular vegetable in an enclosed environment. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, and it's perfectly natural. It's just the way a human animal is built, and it's been this way since the beginning of time, as far as anyone knows. And over the centuries, they have developed various, probably thousands of various different techniques. involved in the alleviation of this excess buildup of gas within your system, see what I mean? Now, I have not got the time or the inclination to go into all the details, although it is a fascinating study, but suffice it to say this, that all of these various techniques will fall into two basic categories. Category one, generally preferred by professional people, is a technique whereby this excess buildup of gas is alleviated in such a manner that virtually no one is aware that it has happened. At least for a few minutes. Now, the second category, generally preferred by sportsmen, is just what I refer to as the let-her-rip approach. Well, there's no question that these men were sportsmen. The fellow to mother's immediate left, I say, will let go with what I would conservatively estimate to be a 48-second fat. Just about blow the doors off that place. I mean, that pandemonium. There was three elderly ladies, and they was at the other end. Their teacups went flying, and there was half a dozen of them anti-nuclear types at the other end. They hit the deck right under the table. They thought Wiscasset blowed right up, you know. There was a bus from the Baptist Sunday School out on Route 1, and they thought they hit a flat. They took a veering off in the... That was wild. Of course, Mother was awful embarrassed. And I felt called upon to make some sort of a rebuttal. Of course, I didn't know exactly what to do or say, but and I didn't want to really mix it up with these fellows look kind of rugged, and of course they was just bailing them beans to them like nothing ever happened, you know. And finally, I stood up my full height and I leaned over. This one fella caught a glimpse of his eyes. I said, "How dare you sit there and do a thing like that before my wife here?" He said, "If I'd known it was her turn, I'd have let her go first." This is kind of subtle, you know. You've got to pay attention, because in Maine, you've got to realize at any given time, there's really only 3 categories of people in the whole state. Everybody in this room, in this whole town, would all fall into one of them 3 categories. Now, you've got your natives.
Now, I am a native. I got all my papers out in the hall. You can check. I've got them right there. You got folks that's from away. You know who you are. Then you see you got your transplants. Now, there's nothing wrong with anybody in any of them three categories. It's fine. The trouble comes in when folks that's in one category, they try to slide over into the other category. Now, I'll give you an example. My next door neighbor lives up to Palmyra, next door to me, in the next trailer over, about 4 miles down the road. Wilbur Pinkham. Now, Wilbur's a good fella. He's 97 years old this year. And, you know, being an elderly fellow and associated that area, why, the newspapers, magazines, everybody's always come interviewing him, you know, to ask him about the old days in, you know, in Maine. And he goes on, he loves it. Of course, he don't exactly say he's a native. He don't exactly dispel the notion either, but I know the truth about Wilbur. He was originally born over to New Hampshire. He was 6 months old before he ever set foot in the state of Maine. Now I know that, and Wilbur knows it, and Wilbur knows it I know. Well, he was over at the trailer the other day, and we was having a few generic beers, you know, and well, he got a little philosophical. He was kind of moaning. He says, well, he says, I'll admit it. I'm not a Maine native. He said, but you've got to acknowledge, he says, Mother and I, why, we've had 7 kids born right out here on this road, and you've got to admit they're natives. I said, look, Wilbur, you can call them anything you want. But I tell you this, if I had a cat, had kittens in the oven, I wouldn't call them biscuits. You know, I got to tell you, though, I really appreciate being entertaining in the state of Maine. And, you know, in the summertime, there's such a wonderful bunch of fairs and festivals. You know, there's a lot going on in Maine, you know, and the last couple of years, you know, they've asked me to do quite a lot of them. You know, I got the Vacant Building Festival up to Eastport this last summer. And of course, the Wiscasset Worm Days, that was good this year. But really, my favorite place, and boy, you know, every year I was hoping they'd ask me, and this year they did. They asked me to be the master of ceremonies up to the Black Fly Festival up to Rangeley. Now this, really, this is it for me, because first of all, Rangeley, you know, it's located up in the ski area, see. Now when I was younger, when I was a boy, I used to go out, say, and play music in the bars up there, the ski areas there, because I was always hoping I was going to run into the ski crowd. Yeah, you know, hook right up with that ski crowd, you know. That's a good crowd there, you know, drives Porsches and got money and stuff. Well, I'll tell you, I never did connect up with the ski crowd, but I run head on into the skidder crowd, and that's mostly what you get up to the Black Fly Festival, you know, the skidder crowd, and it's quite a different crew altogether. But they have this festival every year, and they asked me to come in and MC the Miss Black Fly competition. Oh, I tell you, this is something else. Of course, they have that. Now, I like that Miss Black Fly contest. I tell you why, too. Because it ain't just another one of these beauty contests. Matter of fact, beauty don't hardly enter into it, really, at all up there. Most of these girls that's in the Miss Black Fly there is from the skidder crowd, and they're kind of... But they, you know, they get to do talent, you know. It ain't just the beauty part. They got talent. Now, the girl that won this year, big heavy-set girl, you know, I prefer a heavy-set woman. I do. I don't go for these string beans that's on the magazine covers and stuff. I like somebody a little heft to them. My opinion, a heavy-set woman is shade in the summer and warmth in the winter, so I... And this year's winner, boy, she was nice, chunky girl, heavy-set. For the talent part, you wouldn't believe this. If you didn't actually see it, she took, and they even showed her doing it. They had it on videotape. They showed her doing it. She took and she carved a statue of Michael Jackson out of pulpwood with a chainsaw. Just like that. Yeah. Wicked sharp it was, sharp. Well, you know, they do that. And of course, they have this Miss Blackfly competition. They had it right in the center of town. Saturday night, 7:30, in the IGA parking lot. On a flatbed truck. Now, they've been saving up, but they haven't got it yet. They've been saving for a set of them spotlights, like they got out to Hollywood that goes all over. Well, they couldn't get them, but they done pretty good this year. They had the 2 police cruisers parked with the hind wheels down over the curb, you know, and the high beams on, you know, and looked pretty sharp, I can tell you. They took magic marker and colored the lights on every other one, you know, with red and... Gee, you know, it looked sharp. It did, really. It looked good. Well, I tell you, you talk about excitement, Mr. Man. You'll never see anything like it. You get right there, of course, they wait after, they started after 7:30. Lawrence Welch is still running on the reruns up there, so they want to get a good crowd out. So they get her up there. They get the 3 finalists up there. Of course, and, you know, the crowd just swarms in there. Not to mention the black flies, of course. Now, what I like about this this is just like the Olympics. No chemicals. No, they don't allow them to use any 612 or off or fly dope, none of that. They stand there in their swimsuits on that flatbed track. They pose, you know. Them black flies are swarming wicked, you know. The first one that swats, out she goes. There's 2 left. I was hoping this year, you know, that I could get our boy Hubert to come up with me. You know, we're a little worried about Hubert, Mother and I, you know. You heard of folks who don't know nothing. Well, Hubert don't even suspect nothing. See, I was hoping we'd get Hubert involved and get him into doing, you know, show business. It don't take a lot of brains to make it big in show business, but he wasn't interested. Because I thought he might get into breakdancing or something, you know, but he said, no, he didn't like the traveling, you know, traveling in Maine. Well, I says, look, you know, he started to complain about the potholes and everything. I says, look, first of all, I drive a good big car. And you know, these potholes just affect the life in Maine. You know, they ain't even seasonal. You got them all year round. You got these, and you just learn to get used to them, you know. I got a big car, got an Olds 98. I don't believe in these scrunchy little Japanese cars, you know, because I'm quite big, you know. I tried out one of them Subarus one time. I got in it, like that. Shift, you know. I can open both doors like that. You want me to roll down the back window? Sure. I like a nice big car. I got an Olds 98, 1972. Boy, that thing, I tell you, chummy, you jump in that, Mr. Man, and that's spacious and power everything in that car. You sit down, power ashtray comes right out at you like that. Got a power antenna, Of course, it's just got a coat hanger stuck into it, but right up and down just like that. I got a cut off behind the driver's seat with a flatbed down on the back there. You pull in the gravel pit on a Saturday night in that, Mr. Man, you're somebody, I can tell you, right? The only thing wrong with that car I ever have any complaints about is that it did come from the factory with one of them FM stereo radios there, you know. And we had to get an AM converter to get the good station, you know. But see, I don't mind them potholes. You know, in the car like that, you got some bulk around you. You go down, you see one of them potholes, you got all four wheels going like that, you go bang, you only got three, but you got enough momentum to get you to the gas station. But I'd be driving along in that big car, just listening to the radio, you know, and I'll see this sign tacked up on the side of a post, you know, going by there. It says bump. Fair enough, I'll slow right down, you know, about 10, 15 miles an hour. Drive along for about 3-4 miles, you know. You figure you must be by it by now, right? You stamp on that accelerator and all four wheels right off the ground. You hit that button just like that. I got a chance while I was out there, you know, to get this coffee cup filled up. Boy, don't I love that coffee. Oh, I tell you, and I'm not either talking about this wimpy stuff that Robert Young pushes on TV, you know it. That might be all well and good. You throw a few no-dos in it, but I mean... I want that caffeine there. Yeah, that's good stuff there. Of course, I got an item for Mother. I was a little worried about Mother. You know, Mother, don't she work hard, Mother? Oh, I tell you. She does 4 or 5 different jobs. Most evenings she goes out selling that Mary Kay cosmetics. You know, she does sell that, sell quite a lot of it. You know, and there's a gimmick on that Mary Kay there. You know, you sell so many tons of it, they give you a free car. But I worry, she's out driving all hours of the day and night. So I happened to see this item, and I seen it on the television. Of course, we only get 2 stations on the TV where we are. You don't come in that good, see. We ain't cable ready. In more ways than one. We get 2 stations. We get that Bangor station. Got 5 million Slim Whitman ads, and then you know Slim Whitman, do you? You know, I'd like to know how he got 5 million hits before I ever heard of him. It's one of the great mysteries of life, as far as I'm concerned. Well, they go on now, see, we get that station, then we get the other one named, well, what it is, it's the public access cable station from East Millinocket. See, all they got is they got a video camera, see, up there, up in the corner of the mill. Shoots down on the floor, you know, and you get to see who's working what shift. And if you don't come from that town, I don't think it's that interesting, really. I usually turn it off after 3-4 hours. But the other night, I was sitting in front of some of them Slim Whitman ads there, and oh, he got on and on. They have an announcer on there, won't quit, you know. It goes on and on and on. And he says, do it today before you think better of the idea. And he goes, hounding at you, you know, breaking down your resistance. And then he's give you all these freebies there. If you buy so many, they give you a little, one little whiz-bang there that makes 2 pounds of potato chips out of a 1-pound potato. Is that right? And they got this set of knives. There's this super knife. It specializes in cutting beer cans in half. Well, I just take them down the store and get the nickel back, you know. But they had this other item. Oh, yeah, I tell you now, this was one of them ideas. As soon as I seen it, I says, why didn't I think of that? What it was a Mr. Coffee IV unit. Yeah. Slick as a smelt, I tell you. See, and when it was developed by K-Tel Marketing worldwide for long-haul truckers. And you hang it off the rearview mirror on a little hook there, and the cord comes down there, and it plugs into your cigarette lighter, and this other cord tube comes down, and it goes right into your arm. And they give you a little piece of duct tape, you put it on there with it. And she percolates along all day, see? She trickles right down into your arm, keeps you jacked up in good shape. You keep both hands on the wheel there. Nice. You have never really experienced life till you lived in a trailer. Now, I wouldn't have said that 3 or 4 years ago. Mother was after me to try it out. You know, they had a special over at Ski Avies, you know. They was having a sale on demos. Now, you see, a demo for a trailer, that's just like your regular trailer, except the salesman lives in it, but... Anyways, they had free coffee and donuts, and I figured it was worth a drive, so I went over. But I tell you, I never regretted the day we bought a trailer. I tell you one thing, when you're living in a trailer, you don't feel all isolated from your environment and everything like you do in the house. You sense the elements all around you all the time. You really... Now, we was fortunate. We got in on that demo sale, and we was able to buy a slab over to Lisbon Falls. And fortunately, you know, you got to have a slab put your trailer on. It's a little slab of concrete. It's got all the plumbing and stuff sticking out of it. You just punk her down, hook her up, and you got it there. But we was lucky. We got one that was fairly close to the road. Because I don't believe in these great, huge, expansive lawns, 8 or 10 feet wide. Who needs that? I'd say we got maybe 2.5 feet from my front step to the pavement, right there on that Route 196. And I tell you something, all last winter, I never shoveled one bit of snow. Them semis come by, them blow that right out under the trailer, just blows it right out. Summertime is just like air conditioning. You leave the windows open, it blows right through there. Because you know, the thing about when you buy your trailer, because you realize, most folks likes to fix their house up pretty good. You like to have art. Well, Mother and I love art. You might even say we was art lovers. But I do not go for this cheap, some of this cheaper stuff you will see in some houses. You'll see some of this cheaper art that's done on paper or canvas or some of this. I'm not into that. I'm talking genuine velvet. And big. In our house, we got our choice, you know. You get your choice. You buy your trailer, you get your art all coordinated. They got a raft of it over there at the trailer sales place, you know. They got, I asked a fellow one time, I said, how in the world do you get so much art, this gorgeous art? Because he had everything, you know. You could get 3 or 4 different views of Elvis the King. And they're done real arty, too, when Yeah, it was just like you had a flashlight up one side of the head. There's just one light down one side of it, you know, and he's like that, you know. And, oh, they got everything. They got conquistadores. You ever see them? That's a fighter, you know, usually sitting on a horse. And they go way back for World War II. They got a helmet on them. And they got these ones that Mother and I both drove us nuts, you know. They got these. We went in this demo trailer, and we looked, and they had, of course, they had the sofa there, and they had the lamps on there, and it's all built in. You comes right with one price with the trailer. And they ain't these little squinchy lamps that you see where you might buy one. You get conservative. Oh, let's have this one. They're nice, good-sized lamps. I'd say they're about 6 feet, 5.5 feet. The glass part's about that big. It's got this bubble swirls in it. Goes like that, you know. Nice. And glows in the dark. You don't have to leave your lights on. She glows all night. And and right alongside them, there was these two pictures of these. One was a little girl. Wasn't she cunning? She had this little kitty. She buckled on that kitty. And she had these clothes kind of wore out. And it looked like it was raining. She's outdoors, you know, and she's awful sad looking. Mother and I both broke up because she had eyes about the size of dinner plates, you know, about like that, you know. Now that's art. And in the bedroom, Mother, this is what really got Mother. In the bedroom, they got a painting. I'd say probably must be 6.5 feet square. Kenny Rogers sweating. Oh. Tell you. Nice. Because that Mother, she goes ape over that Kenny Rogers. Anything he does. You like she got that one there, take a ribbon off your head, flop her loose and let her flap. She got that one there. But fortunately, during a part of this special, you see, they allowed, what happened was if you get your trailer during this special, you get a free lifetime prescription to Trailer Life magazine. And it was just our fortune, you know. The first time we went, it got that first issue. It was the annual lawn ornament edition. Boy, you know, it's got that big double spread in the center there, and it's got now you learn, they have articles about lawn ornaments. Now you realize that when you get your trailer, your whole trailer's built all good inside, you get everything coordinated right from the factory. But it's up to you to do the most important part, your lawn. And you can't just do it willy-nilly. You got to, it says in them articles, you got to pick a theme. So Mother and I picked a theme, wildlife. We sent off, we got a starter kit. Now, as I mentioned, that lawn there, I say she's about 2.5 feet wide. She's about 68 feet long, you know, so I got a plastic duck and some ducklings come in this way. Way down the other end, there's a styrofoam goose and little gooselets coming up this way. They're kind of on the collision course, because they ain't moving, you know, but you might not notice if you drove by fast, you know. Then right in the center, we got what they call a cupola. You know what that means, a cupola there? It looks like a well with a handle there, but there's nothing underneath of it. It's got shingles on it, and it's really just something for them styrofoam gray squirrels to jump on top of there like that, you know. So that's sitting there. Now, Mother was out traveling. She was out of state at a big Mary Kay convention, and she got a set of them, these birds. They ain't local. It's a foreign bird. It's a flamenco. You ever see one of them? And they're pink, and they got this droopy neck and one long stringy leg there. Well, she got about 25 of them. And they kind of go in pairs. It's kind of sprouting out like 1, 2, like that. When they start down low and they go up, so they go like that, right by the window there. Gorgeous. Really. Well, then we got the whole ground areas right chock full of all kind of small, we got nice little ceramic frogs, says, welcome to our pad. Got them mallard ducks, you know, we got about a dozen of them. Of course, you get a semi going by, them things look like they're going to take off, you know, like that. Mother wanted to get us them giant butterflies. I was afraid it would take off, you know, some night, just lug us off, you know. Of course, we got exploded tires. You know what I mean, them exploded tires? It's a regular tire, but it's this new technology, exploded inside out, look like a baked potato. And the edges stick up like Jughead's hat there. Now, some folks like to put flowers in there, so we just paint them pink and set there. And I got a couple of the deluxe ones, they cost extra. And that is, oh, I tell you, boy, I tell you, though, this is art too, outdoor art. Because each one of them little points, one will be day-glow yellow, the next one be day-glow orange, then the next one be day-glow yellow, and like that, all the way around. You might not think that's too hard, you try it, dear. You'll end up with two of one color at the end, every time you do that. So we got them there. Then, of course, we got them colored patio blocks leading up to the front steps. We only got 3 of them. It's short. There's only 2.5 feet there. We got an Uncle Sam mailbox with his hand out. I thought that was appropriate, you know. Then there's a little area right alongside the door. There's a special area. And a lot of folks don't really develop that area. Well, of course, we got 3 of them little ceramic kitties grabbing on there like that, you know. But right next to that, we got an item that's made out of wrought plastic. It's like wrought iron, only more durable. And it come out of this catalog that Mother gets. I never seen anything like this catalog. She gets it around Christmas time, and it says Sunset House, and it's skinny. I think it ain't like you would stack 5 or 6 of them, make a regular size of a catalog, but they're long and skinny. But they, in them catalogs, I don't believe it, every item specially designed to be an item that you never thought of before. But once you see it, you've got to have it. Every item is like that. Like these little plungers that takes your blackheads out. You never even thought of that. You see that? You've got to have one. Well, that's everything in this catalog, and that's what this is. It's wrought plastic. It's a name tag. It's got a carriage and horses dragging it across, and in white letters it says, "The Henderson." No, that ain't our name, you know. That's. But it was a demo. But it does come in handy. And I tell you why, and I'll give you a sample. Just say this, for instance. Let's say on a Saturday afternoon, you're sitting in there watching the ball game, you don't want to be bothered. Somebody comes up the door, Mooney's or somebody. Or maybe an Amway salesman. Because I don't make fun of that Amway. I don't. You get involved with that. You might not make much money, but you get wicked excited, and that's worth quite a lot right there. You know? Well, let's say some of these folks comes up and they knock on your door. Because on the trailer, you know, your door don't go knock, kind of go knock at it. So you get out, you go over, you answer the door, and they'll say, "Is Mr. Henderson home?" You'll say, "No." Shut the door and go back and do what you was doing. There you go.
Now, what I'm talking about here, okay, is like life itself, okay? And your own eating habits will formulate your own attitude towards life itself. Now, I believe, and my people, we have developed a philosophy. We are strict carnivores. We will not consume any vegetable matter. And we advocate a diet, okay, of lean red meat and black coffee. And that's it. Okay? Now, I can tell you from my own experience how my consciousness was raised on this issue. Okay? I was in a health foods restaurant. It was before my consciousness was raised. I would eat vegetables like anyone else, okay? I was sitting in this restaurant, and I remember sitting there, and there were like macrame plant hangers there. And there was like this old Neil Young record was playing on the sound system, and I could look through and see the kitchen, okay? And there were like two girls in there, and they didn't mean anything by it, but I saw what they had done. Now, you have to realize, man, I was just through reading The Secret Life of Plants, okay? So I was really like tuned in to like plant energy, okay? I realized they're like very sensitive. Like if you walk by and you say like, you know, negative vibes to your geranium, it just like blows it away, you know, it just blows it away, okay? Okay? You know, like your shrubbery around your house, man, it's going to suffer, okay? Okay, so I realized this, and I looked out in the kitchen, I couldn't believe it, man. This girl, and she didn't mean it, I know, but she had these carrots, man, and I realized they had been like ripped out of the ground, you know. And she put them on the counter, and then she didn't even knock them out. She just took this knife, and she began slashing at them. Oh, it was like incredible. It just like blew my mind, you know. Okay, so she began like slashing. Okay, and her friend, again, I mean, really, she didn't like mean anything, but she heaved them into this boiling pot of water. It blew my mind completely, all right? And then the waitress brought my bean sprouts, you know, and I just looked. And these little sprouts, man, they had not even begun to enjoy life. They were just like, you know, and plants are like, they just love life, you know, you see them coming up through the pavement, you know. And all of a sudden, my consciousness, I realized, wow, it blew me away. I understood about life, man. Plants, like they love life, man. They're so pacifistic. They don't chase or bite or hurt anyone. They're just enjoying life, okay? And I began to leave, you know, and I walked by the salad bar. Man, it was like a train wreck, you know, I just couldn't. I tell you, man, I was like really shaken, okay? So like I was driving along, and suddenly the other half of the philosophy began to click in my mind, okay? As I drove by a field, I saw like some cows, all right? And all of a sudden, I saw those cows like the scales had fallen off my eyes, and I saw them with a new vision, and I realized something I'd never realized before. The obvious fact. They were bored stiff. I mean, they were like saying, if I have to spend like another night in the barn, it's gonna blow my mind completely, like, you know. They were like ready to go. Then I began to like piece together the other facets. I realized our nation, okay, after years of people becoming more and more oriented to vegetables, okay, like the whole nation was like becoming wimpy. Okay, and I realized we needed to get our diet straightened out, okay? We needed to resume and get back into our place of prominence and world power. You know, we were like slipping, okay? So I got together with some friends, okay? We've created a cookbook which we want to make available to you, and it's a whole life plan for living, okay? It's not just a cookbook. It's called Diet for an Aggressive Planet. In which we instruct you in just how to accomplish your goal of becoming a complete carnivore. We have testimonials unsolicited from some very famous people. Al Haig has given us a beautiful testimonial, man. You know, how this revolutionized his life. People have their questions they've written in the back of the book. We have a section, you know, people will say, like, for instance, like, how do you eat when you're traveling? It's a problem, you know. People like me who's like, you know, you're going around, like, you know, telling the world about this, and it's hard, you know, because you're like, you know, you want to eat a hamburger, man, and I've had them bring me a hamburger, and there's that bun, you know? And I just think of the thousands of wheat fields that had to be cut down for that bun, and the carnage that involved. It blows me away. And even the meat sometimes, they will put like a soya bean in there, an innocent soya bean. So you got to be very careful, what you do and how you do that, But if you follow our book, you'll see that there are some recipes there you can make using the right chemicals, additives, and food colorings, which you need. You need that. You need that. People spend thousands of dollars on embalming, which is not necessary. Okay. You eat the proper diet, you're ready when you go. I have had a number of people over the years question me about how I talk and why I talk in the manner that I do when I'm doing my comedy monologues. And a few people along the way have made allegations that might be something about it that doesn't quite ring true. Well, as most of you are aware, I was born and raised in Maine, and my family for generations back the same. But I wrote this piece to sort of deal with that situation in a comedy way. It's patterned after the poems of Holman Day, which I've illustrated and recorded on albums and that sort of thing. He wrote around the turn of the century. So this is a piece that I call The Voice. I've a tale I'd like to tell you, and the bulk of it is true, and the rest is only harmless window dressing. It happened at a Grange Hall supper just outside St. Albans, Maine, where I'd stopped by to practice my profession. Now, the way I make my living don't involve no honest work. I never pound a nail if I can help it. What I do is just tell stories. Once I really start to perk, I'll run on worse than the preacher in the pulpit. Well, on this particular evening, I was sitting with my wife, and we was having one last scrid of rhubarb pie, when this hefty-looking fella jumped on stage and grabbed the mic and shouted, "Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got a special guest this evening, comes from out on Raymond Road, and they say he tells a pretty funny joke. At least he'll try for what we're paying. So let's make him feel to home." Well, then he sat down, and I got up and spoke. Well, it wouldn't have took a genius to see they liked my stuff. The grins was thick as deer flies in the wards. The ladies shrieked and giggled, and the men about split a gap. Time I quit, we all felt pretty good. All that is but one old-timer. And he did seem out of place, considering his stated point of view. And all to once, he jumped right at me and wagged his finger in my face and said, "How dare you come here talking in that put-on Yankee way? Why, you're phony as a new $3 bill, and is downright disrespectful to the grand old state of Maine, and no one else will tell you so, I will." Well, that old Grange Hall got so quiet you could hear the rafters creak. Every eyeball in the place was aimed at me, and the silence got so deafening that I hardly dared to speak. But I finally said, "Excuse me, I can see that you're pretty agitated, and I can't say I'm surprised, considering your stated point of view, but you kind of got things backwards. And if you don't mind, I'd like to try just explaining the simple, honest truth. Now, the voice I use for storytelling, that ain't my only voice, and that much is the truth. I don't deny it. But you say that it's a phony. Well, now that's a different point, and if that's what you got to sell, I just don't buy it. You see, I come by this voice quite honest, in a natural kind of way. You might say I found it laying around the docks,
of the boatyards in the summers of my boyhood in Booth Bay, because in the harbor, that's how everybody talks. Or you could go back still further to the shores of Blue Hill Bay, where my mother and her family done just fine, even through the Great Depression, which wouldn't have been so bad if it weren't coming on the heels of such hard times. Or you could go back until you met my famous great-granddad painting portraits of the ships in old Castine. I guess there ain't no way of proving what kind of voice he had, but by now I guess you see just what I mean when I say of all the voices I might use from time to time, there's only one that really suits me well. You see, this voice is an inheritance that money cannot buy, and I would not be fool enough to sell. Now, I'll sell you all the jokes I got, and I hope you buy them too. But the voice don't cost a nickel, and that's for free. And I hope you get my point, I said, but either way, I'm through. I've said my piece, and now it's time for us to leave. Well, we got our coats and said goodbye, and as we stepped out into the night, a warm breeze brought that pine scent off the woods. And as we stood and sniffed the summer air, a voice come drifting from inside, saying, "Gory, wasn't that lovely? He done good." Thank you. He's clever in a certain way. Now, see, last year, New Year's, he made quite a lot of money because he noticed he didn't know a whole lot about it, but he'd heard that Maine has a tough drunk driving law, see. And he put two and two together, and he realized, see, Maine also has a grand old tradition of drinking and driving, see. So he thought maybe there could be some, they could make some, he could make some money off it. So what he done was he rented the gravel pit. Yeah, and he took that old Dodge pickup, got her out there, put up some signs, Hubert's Drink and Drive. What you do is you go to the gravel pit, and for $20, you can have a half hour in that pickup, and he's got the gravel pit all fixed up. Yeah, he's got them exploded tires and fat ladies bending over, and he's got, So it looks like a regular road. And you get the pickup and 2 6-packs Colt 45, all you can drink, and you can throw them right out the window just like you would on the road and everything, and then when they're done, there's somebody to drive you home, see? Thank you. Because I knew darn well, even back then, see, it was all made up. It was. They got plenty of gas. They always did, see. They was just trying to jack the prices up and stuff. So I figured one of the things, we got to get out of using this petroleum fuel. We got to get these alternative sources of energy, whales and stuff, or whatever they do. I don't know, solar, something like that. But they're never going to think of anything like that, see, until we use up the gas we already got. See? So I thought I'd stimulate. So I got me an Olds 98. Yeah. Well, she got about 10 miles a gallon, but I took and ripped the carbs off. I got her down 3 or 4. And I come out with a few tips. See, now, for instance, you don't have to, you go in something like a movie or something, you don't have to shut her off. Leave her idling, Sometimes I get a big flat rock and just put her on the exhilarator, let her run like that. Bert and I was haddock fishing this one particular summer. And we was having a pretty good summer. The fishing wasn't that good, but the weather was nice and kept us away from the press of the tourists. And we was getting along pretty good, till I noticed a string of, I'd say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 days or so. Bert seemed to arrive each morning down at the dock, just bursting with enthusiasm to go fishing, you see. Well, that wasn't like him. And by I noticed the trend, and I queried him as to the source of his motivation. Well, after a while, he allowed us how the truth was that his mother-in-law was visiting, see. Now, I have to say that I have absolutely nothing against mothers-in-law as a general group, you understand. I firmly believe behind every successful man, there's a surprise mother-in-law. But I happen to know this one particular individual, and I must say she was quite a case. She was a very large woman, and as I say in my book, that was a plus, see, because I do prefer that stature. I do. My opinion is a woman like that, shade in the summer and warmth in the winter. But she was a very large woman, and each year on her annual visit, as she worked her way up in tonnage, she also had a propensity for verbalization that was just awesome. She could talk the back off a tree. She was going all the time. And see, what it was, the combination of the two was deadly. See, she was a person of whom it might well be said she was all right in small doses. Trouble is, you couldn't get a small dose. So I understood Bert's dilemma completely, and I said, "How long is she aptly visited?" Well, he said, "Probably another few days." Well, I says, "All right." And last day of her intended visit, Bert come down to the dock. He was just beaming like that, you know, grinning like a dog eating bumblebees. And threw aboard the gear and was just about ready to cast off. And all at once I heard this noise out of Bert. Whoa, whoa, like that, just like a wounded deer. And I looked up in the direction he was looking. I seen just what he seen. It was her car. Big Olds 98, Massachusetts plates. All the shock absorbers on the driver's side were shot. She come barreling down that dirt road with a cloud of dust behind her and that great beefy arm waving out the window there, and she was yelling the top of her voice. She was bound and determined she was going to go fishing. Well, there wasn't nothing we could do about it. We made the boat fast, got up the ramp, opened the car door on the driver's side, pried her out as best we could. Bert got on one end of her, and I got on t'other. Somehow we got her down over the gangplank there, down the ramp, down onto the float. Bert stood off to one side to keep her even. We loaded her aboard best we could, scented her fairly well. Of course, all this time, you know, she's just talking a blue streak, and everything that could have left had left already, say. Seagulls had cleared out everything. It was just ash. And it was otherwise a real pretty morning, quiet kind of morning. You could see just a little bit of sea smoke on the harbor, you know, sun coming up. She was just a-going at it. Well, wasn't nothing we could do, so we chugged out the mouth of the harbor. It was real glassy calm that morning. But I noted that just as we got past the mouth of the harbor, we just begun to hit just a little bit of a swell. Nothing serious, just a little bit of a swell like that. But I took note of exactly the same moment we started hitting a little bit of heavy water like that. Her talking dropped several notches. See, I took this as a sign. I was right, too. It wasn't more than 5 minutes later, I glanced over and she was
almost quiet, and she was looking real green around the gills. And went more than 5 minutes after that, she was up over the gunwale with an awful load of chum. And well, you could tell it was going to be a long day of fishing, and she wasn't having that good of a day, really. By the time we got out where we was going, we had kind of laid her down in the bilge in order to make her more comfortable, see? And, well, of course, that boat always leaked a little bit, so as it leaked in, and of course, as we caught a few fish and threw them down there and stuff, well, you know, she really wasn't having that good of a day. But the fishing was fairly good. And she kind of settled into a pattern, a kind of a sloshing and moaning. More, you know, and that really, you can get used to that fast, you know, it just kind of went along. So we was busy fishing, and so I can't tell you exactly what happened, see, because we was real preoccupied, and all I know is that for a while there, she just seemed to be just settled in that pattern. Then apparently what must have happened was, when you're out in the open ocean, every once in a while you get a wave come along, great big break or something, just kind of out of nowhere, and apparently when them bigger waves come in, and it must have smacked the boat right on the, just on the starboard gunwale, just as she was on the upslosh towards the port, say. Just caught her right on the upslosh, and up she went over the gunwale and right straight down, slick as a cup of custard. I was surprised. I was. I would have thought a person with that amount of girth would have had a certain amount of built-in flotation, but no, sir. Down she went just like a stone, and it was obvious there wasn't a thing we could do about it. So we kept fishing. And along towards the end of the afternoon, we hauled in the gear, stowed everything, headed back for port, put everything in the boathouse, put the boat on the mooring, brung the tender in. Then Bert run right off, call his wife. You can imagine she was very upset. Anybody would be. They would. But I explained, there wasn't nothing we do about it. Well, you can imagine they was just in a big uproar. Well, finally, a few days afterwards, they did eventually have a funeral service, memorial service down there in Massachusetts, because there was no body. Probably considerable savings to the family right there, but another week or two went by, and everything had pretty well blowed over. And this one morning, I think it was a Thursday, Bert and I was down to the co-op having coffee before we went out fishing. And I was over at the counter talking with the fellas and having coffee, and Bert was over at the other corner playing the Pac-Man machines. And when the fellows from the co-op come up, and he says, you remember that heavy-set girl out fishing with you here a couple weeks ago? Yeah. I said, I do. I says, I recall the very one of which you speak. Well, he says, I just thought we'd let you know she washed up here down Mill Cove last night. I said, you don't say. Yeah. He says, she did. I said, what kind of shape was she in? Well, he says, not too shabby considering. Said she did have about 24 fairly good-sized lobsters clinging on to her. He said, I just thought we'd let you know. And I said, well, thank you. And I went over to break the news to Bert. Of course, he was real upset, but it would be. And after a minute, to absorb the shock, he turned to me and says, well, what do you think we ought to do? Well, I says, look, Bert, I says, first off, it's none of my business. I said, it's your family, and I realize it's a difficult situation. I says, I will say this much. I says, considering the state of the economy and the price of lobsters, I'd say set her again. Thank you. Well, it's time for me to start loving you. Time to make that sacrifice. Time for all of us two-bit philosophers to take our own advice. When I was hungry and cold, did you feed me and clothe me, or did you just stand there like ice? It's time for me to start loving you this time, this world, this life. Well, it's time for you to start loving me. You shouldn't put it off for so long. It's not so very hard a thing to see. You could start by admitting that you just might be wrong. You know, we all have to start from this cold heart of ice. But when you let go of it, the feeling's so nice. Well, it's time for you to start loving me this time, this world, this life. Well, I've seen a lot of rules and regulations going down among the nations. The laws of man will never heal these wounds, no, but love can bring us all together. You know that true love survives and lives forever. All God's children standing in one room. So it's time for me to start loving you. It's time to make that sacrifice. It's time for all of us two-bit philosophers to take our own advice. Now, when you were hungry and cold, did I feed you and clothe you, or did I just stand there like ice? Well, it's time for you to start loving me this time, this world, this life. And they always do that. This kind of song, I don't know. Oh yeah, well, this time, this world, this life. Thank you.